Maternal Kin.
Good morning, Georgie.
Good morning, Mike. Beautiful day, isn't it?
Sure is. Near perfect. Clear skies, light winds, and the forecast high is 76 degrees. If he's up for it, I'll be taking the captain for a drive later.
Wonderful, Mike. I'm sure he will enjoy that. He's waiting for you at the usual place.
Good. We'll let you know when we leave. I'll have him home before dinner.
Fine. I hope you both have a great day.
Top of the morning, Captain. Looks like a decent day for an airport visit, doesn't it?
Let's see what it looks like in a couple of hours.
Suits me, Captain. Did you get through the handbook?
More or less. Did you?
I skimmed through it for high points. Hopefully my legal fast-reading experience will carry me through today.
Well, we'll see. It's good to have confidence. Meanwhile, Mike, let's press on with this interview. Since you seem to want my entire biography, I'm going to ask a favor. For the benefit of my decedents who may one day be interested in family history and actually read your book, I ask to take this juncture to briefly tell what I know of my mother's immediate family. You can delete it later if it doesn't fit. Shall I proceed?
Lead the way, Captain.
Just as he had been deceptive about his identity, so had he been about a reason for this visit. This visit had much to do with self-identification. As far as his paternal family history was concerned, it was all news to him. The more, the better. We drove to Portland before sailing to Germany to visit Mother Ada's family. Her mother Grace and her husband Dan, plus Ada's 6 siblings, 1 older brother and 5 younger sisters and their families. As fate would have it, this was to be their final gathering of Grace's 7 children, who were all born in Magalloway Plantation, Maine, where the only industry was the lumber company my grandfather worked for. Grandmother Grace Bennett married Earl Hoyt at age 16 and bore him 7 children. Mother Ada, the second, was born April 28, 1911. 15 years later, Father Hoyt died on the operating table from an allergic reaction to ether during an appendectomy. Life in Maine was brutal in those days, especially during the harsh winters. Survival depended almost entirely on self-sufficiency. Grace did not fare well as a young widow and destitute mother of 7, to the point where the farm was sold and her children were boarded out to foster homes, except for older brother Merton and Ada, who were old enough to be on their own. Merton married a local girl, and the lumber company sent Ada off to a Boston girls' trade school to be trained as a seamstress. By the time I came along, Grandmother Grace had recovered and worked at the B&M Bean Factory, which greatly redeemed Portland's Back Bay sewage stench when the tide was out. The delicious odor of those 8-hour baking beans pervaded the entire city. Grace had an endearingly husky voice and laugh. She resembled the great actress Ethel Barrymore and had similar commanding presence. She was warm, soft, and loving, yet highly intelligent and strong. She truly was the queen of the family. I remember her with great reverence and affection. As her oldest grandson, I was her favorite. Late in life, Grace married Dan Benwell, a fellow B&M employee who had been an alcoholic to the point of having DTs. Grace refused his proposal unless he swore off. True to his word, Dan never drank again, and I have never known 2 people more vigorously in love and happy until they passed away in the 50s. Everyone loved both of them. Lesson learned, it's never too late. Mother's brother and best childhood friend, Merton, was an oddball, as are most maniacs. Early on, he married a McGalloway farm girl. They had one daughter, but were soon divorced. During World War II, Merton joined the Navy as a Seabee, as the construction battalion was known. He was reported missing when his ship was sunk in the Pacific, but thankfully turned up. After the war, he became a career fireman in Portland and once made front-page news for rescuing a baby from a burning building. Merton then married Tina, an attentive schoolteacher who was unjustifiably disliked by the family for her education, class, reserved ways, and pinched facial expression. They had one son, Leroy, who was still in jail last I heard. When Merton retired as a fireman, they moved to Naples, Florida, where he had an outboard motor repair shop until he passed from cancer in the 60s. Mother's sisters impressed me as exceptionally bright and independent women, each in their own way, yet very different from my mother, who was labeled with an undeserved rich bitch tag. It tells you something about Ada's sisters, that they could consider an Army sergeant's wife a rich bitch, doesn't it? I could spend hours telling you just the little I knew about Ada's sisters. Briefly, though, they were very colorful, earthy, salty, intelligent, and strong-willed women, much like their mother Grace, only without her grace. Frances had 7 children, one stillborn, by her husband Tommy, a crude truck driver who stayed home only long enough to father Frances's next baby. They had a very stormy relationship, but an underlying everlasting bond. I admired both of them. Tommy and father got along well, though they had little in common. In my teens, I was proud to be allowed to play poker and go fishing with them at night off the piers in Portland Harbor, while they discussed women, comparing their relative traits to makes of automobiles. Cadillacs being tops, of course. It was a nice rite of passage for me. Tommy passed away in the 60s. Frances lived to a ripe old age and passed in the 90s, cared for by a devoted son who lived with her. Wilma was pale, thin, and frail. She also married a truck driver named Guppy, who was as pale and thin as she was, so of course they had 3 pale, thin children. Wilma later got the family's attention when she abandoned her husband and children to run off with a man to Florida. Marjorie was the sister most like her mother, and so was everyone's favorite. Stout, jovial, and bright, Marjorie, like Grace, was a commanding presence. Marjorie was married once, just long enough to get pregnant with her son Wayne before her Army husband shipped out to die on Normandy Beach during the D-Day landings. In the 50s, Marjorie had an unhappy affair which resulted in the birth of her daughter. She worked mostly in hospitals as a nurse's aide and was living in a trailer when she died of heart failure in the 70s. Pearl was the saltiest, toughest, most fiery and temperamental of the sisters. She and Jean, the youngest sister, were very close, as were Pearl and Marjorie, who played guitar and sang country western music together. Pearl first married an abusive bartender and had her only child, Kenneth. Pearl's second husband was career Army. Her third husband, John, was a retired postal worker. They moved to Tallahassee in the 80s to be near her son, Kenneth, when John had a severely disabling stroke and passed away in the early 90s, a week before my father. Pearl passed away in a nursing home with Alzheimer's disease. Jean was the youngest, prettiest, and most glamorous of the sisters. She married the brother of Pearl's first husband, who was also an abusive bartender, and had a baby girl. When Jean divorced, she asked my parents to take her daughter in. My father agreed, but only on the condition of adoption, his way of getting out of it, since he knew it would be unacceptable to Jean. We never knew for sure, but believed that the daughter was raised by her ex's parents in Erie, Pennsylvania. In 1949, Jean was working at a Boston nightclub as a cocktail waitress, cigarette girl, and photographer. With her during our 1949 visit was the owner of the club, an obvious mafia-type figure. I always had a sort of crush on Jean, though I rarely saw or spoke to her. Actually, it would be more accurate to say that I felt a unique spiritual connection with Jean, a recognition of her as someone I had perhaps known before. Less than a year later, Jean was found dead in her apartment with the unlit stove gas on. The police ruled it a suicide, but the family believed it was a homicide. 20 years later, Jean would reveal herself in my life in a very dramatic way. That Portland visit before sailing to Germany was important to me because I was old enough to be included as more than a child to be seen and not heard. We all visited the old family homestead in Magalloway, where the well-preserved farmhouse still stood. Several great photos exist of that trip, 2 taken at a dam. One was of the entire gang face on, the other was of everyone's backsides as they leaned on the dam railing. Father titled that photo, "The American Can Company." One Saturday afternoon, we have a great clam bake on the Back Bay beach with the tide out for clam digging. Fortunately, with the wind behind us. Lobsters, Italian sandwiches, now called subs, B&M beans, beer, and soft drinks complemented the menu. God knows how anyone survived eating those Back Bay clams. Soon, however, it was time to be off to New York City to board an Army transport ship for Germany. So that's it for Mother's Folks in 1949.
Okay, Captain. I'm glad you told me about your mother's family. Perhaps she will do the same on your father's side as well.
Sure, Mike, we'll get to them too, but first, let's go to the airport.